the stock market, mutual funds, annuities, all these different products out there that at the end of the day seem to just not work for most people. If we look at like what the Social Security Administration tells us, you take 100 people at retirement age, only 5 out of 100 people in this country are going to be financially secure enough to actually retire the way they want to, meaning 95% of people in this country work their entire lives to get to that awesome retirement day. And then what happens? It isn't what they thought it was going to be. They have to keep working. And now there's a lot of reasons why that happens. Maybe the timing, like in '08 where everything comes down, or maybe, something happened along the way. They got divorced. There's a disaster like COVID. Like things do happen. But, at the end of the day, like it's just sad to see the richest, most incredible country the world has ever known, the United States of America, that 95% of people can't live that dream retirement that they deserve. And so very young, I kind of realized, hey, like how are successful people doing this?
I was listening to Dave Ramsey the other day. Tell me what you think of this. A guy calls in with $3 million in cash. He says, what do? I want to retire tomorrow. And Dave was like lost. He's like, well, what do you mean? Well, this is easy. You put the $3 million into a successful mutual fund that's earning 12% and live off of 10%, and you won't even deplete your principal. What do you think of that advice?
Sure. What mutual fund is going to pay me 12%? Yeah, if that existed, absolutely. But that's not the real world, is it?
It's not the real world. It's so sad when you hear these people who think that they, have $3 million ready to retire. I talked to a guy who had $4.5 million, and a year prior he had $6 million, but the market took it away. And I showed him how to have guaranteed income and avoid tax and all this stuff. And what did he do? He fell for another financial advisor saying, we'll turn your 4.5 back into 6. By the way, I'll take no risk. You'll take the risk as the consumer. I'll get paid regardless of the performance of the account, and we'll cross our fingers together. And that's the advice that you have floating around out there. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Cash Flow Conversations. Today I have an infinite banking practitioner, Stephen Nagy from the company Money Multiplier. Stephen, welcome, man. Good to have you here.
Hey, Matt. Yeah, great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. So I've known you for a little over a year now, and you guys crush it in the insurance space. You guys have built a great business that has been able to scale incredibly compared to other life insurance agencies and financial practices. But before we dive into the insurance side, let's go back. Let's go over some of your history. So you were telling me earlier, out of college, you were a financial advisor with all of the licenses and all that.
Yeah, I mean, long story short, out of college, like probably a lot of college kids, I had no idea really what I wanted to do. And I moved down I grew up in Virginia, Southwest Virginia, went to school at Radford University. And so I drove down to Southwest Florida, to Fort Myers, Florida, and moved in with my cousin. We ended up buying a house together back then, but no idea what I really wanted to do. So my dad, I had helped him with a used car dealership when I was younger, when I was in high school and college. So I knew the car business a little bit. So went and got a job for a Lincoln dealership in Fort Myers, Florida, while I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And in that job, I actually had a coworker that had just retired from Ameriprise Financial. And at the time, it was actually American Express Financial Advisors, and they were just transitioning into a new spinoff called Ameriprise Financial. And so he was telling me a little bit about, what that world looks like. And he's like, what do you want to do? And we had that whole conversation, I don't know what I want to be when I want to grow up and things like that. And so he goes, you know what? He goes, I still have a lot of connections over there. I just retired. Let me introduce you to the directors and the managers of the company. And, maybe it's a good fit. Maybe it's something that would interest you. So I said, all right, I'll take the interview. Went in, chatted with them. Honestly, at the time, I did not know the difference between a stock and a bond. So, quite honestly. So when you become a financial advisor, you have to get sponsored by somebody to get the Series 7 and 66 and all that. So they said, listen, we are willing to sponsor you if you think you can really go out there and pass these exams. And so I said, all right, challenge accepted. And I ended up doing it and passed with flying colors. And the funny story, Matt, about a year later, I was sitting down with the two directors of the company that hired me, that interviewed me originally. And they told me, they said, we actually had an internal bet going. One of the guys said, I thought you were going to pass and we'd bring you on, you do well. The other guy said, I thought you were going to fail miserably. So I proved one guy wrong, and it ended up being a mind-opening experience, though, because as a financial advisor, my job was to sit down with clients and explore their financial goals and their dreams and all of that. But then after talking about their dreams and what retirement looks like, then I had to bring them back to reality. okay, here's where you actually are. Here's, how what we're going to have to do to get you to where you want to be. You're either going to have to stop spending so much now so you can save more, or we're going to have to take on more risk so we can try and get better returns, or you're going to have to push back retirement. It just seems like every conversation I was having with clients, that's what it ended up looking like. And I was like, what am I really doing here? And I was like, because we were putting people in traditional investments, the stock market, mutual funds, annuities, all these different products out there that at the end of the day, they seem to just not work for most people. If we look at like what the Social Security Administration tells us, you take 100 people at retirement age, only 5 out of 100 people in this country are going to be financially secure enough to actually retire the way they want to, meaning 95% of people in this country work their entire lives to get to that awesome retirement day. And then what happens? It isn't what they thought it was going to be. They have to keep working. And now there's a lot of reasons why that happens. Maybe the timing, like in '08 where everything comes down, or maybe, something happened along the way. They got divorced, or there was a disaster like COVID. Like, things do happen. But, at the end of the day, like, it's just sad to see the richest, most incredible country the world has ever known, the United States of America, that 95% of people can't live that dream retirement that they deserve. And so very young, I kind of realized, hey, like, how are successful people doing this? So I started just personally exploring what that looks like. So I
really quick.
Really
quick. So you mentioned like, so 5 out of 100 people are ready to retire. I was listening to Dave Ramsey the other day. Tell me what you think of this. A guy calls in with $3 million in cash. He says, what do? I want to retire tomorrow. And Dave was like lost. He's like, well, what do you mean? This is easy. You put the $3 million into a successful mutual fund that's earning 12% and live off of 10%, and you won't even deplete your principal. What do you think of that advice?
Sure. What mutual fund is going to pay me 12%? I mean, yeah, if that existed, absolutely. But that's not the real world, is it?
It's not the real world. It's so sad when when you hear these people who think that they, have $3 million ready to retire. I talked to a guy who had $4.5 million, and a year prior he had 6, but the market took it away. Right. And I showed him how to have guaranteed income and avoid tax and all this stuff. And what did he do? He fell for another financial advisor saying, we'll turn your 4.5 back into 6. By the way, I'll take no risk. You'll take the risk as the consumer. I'll get paid regardless of the performance of the account. And we'll cross our fingers together. And that's the advice that you have floating around out there. Is you'll get 12% in the market, live on 10, and you won't even what happens if the market goes down 20 and the guy takes out $300,000? He'll have $2 million left in 1 year. That's 66% of what he started with, just because it's a horrible advice. So I think you're right. 5% out of 100 people are ready to retire. And I don't even know if they know how to actually do it, because they've been saving their whole lives. They've never even understood how to actually spend it. So there's a lot of crazy advice out there.
Yeah, I mean, I saw it firsthand. I mean, honestly, as a financial advisor with Ameriprise, they didn't teach me how to smartly invest people's money, or, just stocks, mutual funds, all that. 90% of my job was how to cold call, how to sell, how to do presentations. Like, it's so focused on that. And then what they do is they create these little sheep. I mean, I don't know what else to call them, Matt, but these little sheep that just kind of just repeat all the same advice that they're told is good, but in reality, we can see that it doesn't work. But because they have such these licenses, and that's just the way it's always been, like, everybody just seems to continue to follow that advice. I mean, I did it for a short time. Luckily, I only did it for a couple of years, but I saw it firsthand, and I was able to get out of that world. But my business partner, Chris Nagy, was a high-level advisor for New York Life for 16 years. He was in this world, and the stories he has are very similar to what I experienced for 2. It's just this stuff doesn't work. So this isn't just us reading statistics, or this is firsthand. Like, this is actually what people go through, and it's wild.
Dude, you know what's crazy? So I went to school for architecture, and so in order to be a licensed architect, you have to have an undergrad degree, and then you have to have a professional degree or a master's. And then you have to have 3 years of an internship signed off by a licensed architect. And then you have to pass 6 or 7 exams that are anywhere from 4 to 8 hours apiece. Then you get a license. And what do you get after that? Liability. You don't get a pay raise necessarily. So you have to do so much work to become a licensed architect. My twin brother, who's a smart kid, got his 65 life and health and series 6 30 days. And now he's licensed to be a financial advisor in 30 days.
Oh yeah.
And that, I mean, you talk about liability, dude. You can deal with people. You can literally say, "Hey, I'm going to go gamble with your money in the market." I have no, they say there's a fiduciary responsibility. I question that all the time because
Oh yeah.
the client can lose money and the advisor's still going to get paid. So it's cool. So you had this epiphany that it's not working. Chris is a great mentor. He does awesome stuff. He's really created a heck of a brand for himself.
Yeah.
So what got you transitioning from away from the dark side or away from Ameriprise into what you do now?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's been a long journey. I mean, this was back in 2006 when I was an advisor, but what ultimately led to what I do today was attending a free seminar, actually. So if you've ever seen like some of those infomercials on TV or get the mailers, come out to learn, how to become a millionaire. And I was like,
Yeah.
I don't know, I got nothing to lose. So my cousin and I, actually, the guy we moved down to Fort Myers and we bought the house together. We decided to go to this seminar and check it out, and it ended up, being sitting there for 90 minutes, listening to the speaker at the front of the room talk about, what real estate investing allows people to do in their lives, and talked all about controlling your money, controlling your destiny, controlling your future, not working for somebody else, not working to build someone else's lifestyle and paychecks, and doing it for yourself, and entrepreneurship, and everything he was up there talking about just really resonated to me. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I like that. Like, yeah, I could see myself doing this. So we decided to actually buy this course that they offered, and we got some education, and we went out there and started doing some real estate. Now, if you listen to the timing of that was 2006 leading into 2008. Everybody knows what happened then. So it was kind of an interesting time to get started in real estate investing. Luckily, at the time, I had only done a few deals, and we didn't lose a house, but we were positioned where we didn't get hit as hard as a lot of other investors that were, in the business a little longer, that were really ramped up at that time. But what we were able to do was weather the storm and continue to educate ourselves to a point where once the market did come down and all those foreclosures started to hit, we were able to go in and really start buying things up and really doing pretty well with the business. And from that turned into getting an invitation from Robert Kiyosaki. So Robert Kiyosaki, if anybody on here has ever read Rich Dad Poor Dad or Cash Flow Quadrant, any of that, what do you think of those, Matt? Do you like Kiyosaki?
I love him, dude. I think it's great. I love the way that he talks about debt. I love the way that he talks about how wealthy people avoid taxation. And here's the thing. The IRS knows this. That's why they created the tax code. The IRS incentivizes people to take risks to create business because it grows the economy. They don't incentivize employees. They get hit with the hardest tax in the world as an ordinary income tax. So these are, the idea of sending your kid to college so they can become an attorney or a physician, they're going to be penalized by the IRS. And so he can go out there and talk about all these things about how to avoid it legally, because that's what the IRS wants to have happen eventually. At the end of the day, that's what they're interested in, creating the better economy.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. And so I love all Kiyosaki stuff as well. I still, follow him to this day. He's,
have you ever bought have you ever played the cash flow game?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just got that. I haven't played it yet, but the cash flow game looks pretty fun.
Yeah, I know you have a few younger kids, Matt, but as they get a little bit older, it's a really fun game to actually play with the children. They start wrapping their heads around it, which, by the way, remind me at the end when we get into infinite banking a little bit, a conversation I had with my 8-year-old son last night when we left baseball practices. Wild is what I tell. But anyways, so Kiyosaki at the time was launching a educational division of everything he was doing, and he got into the seminar space. So because of my background, where I was the financial advisor turned into real estate investor, had learned from seminars, I started to develop some contacts in that world. So Kiyosaki actually invited me to join their team and start going out and conducting these seminars all across the country. And so when I had that opportunity, I had grown up in a small little town in the middle of Southwest Virginia, a small little town called Christiansburg. right next to Virginia Tech, Blacksburg, if you're familiar with that area. So growing up in a small little town, I didn't travel a lot. I didn't, we didn't, I still have friends to this day that have never left that small little town. Probably never
Jeez.
left Virginia. So just to
Wow.
give you some perspective. So when I had an opportunity to go travel the country, I was like, let's do it, man. Like, this sounds awesome. So I jumped on that and we started traveling around and holding the seminars and showing other people how to get started in real estate investing. And I was all in on it just because I saw what it had done for me so far. I saw what it had done for so many other people. So it was a great transition to be able to go out there and start doing that.
I love it, man. So what you got to experience is the fall of the real estate market, because people have to be aware that the consumer that got involved in real estate in 2010 and beyond have never seen the correction, and they just think it's this thing that always works, and it doesn't. So you got the luck of having the experience of the failure.
Yes, firsthand. And so I get asked this a lot right now, Matt. I'm sure you do too. Like, what do you think of the market we're in now, or where do you think we're headed, or what are you doing with your money? Like, are you I'm right now personally, I'm just very conservative, so I probably have higher cash reserves than maybe I typically would. My investments, I'm trying to be very smart where the money's going, more short-term stuff, or if it's longer term, are there multiple exit strategies just in case things do turn, just to make sure I protect myself, because I still have that PTSD from then, to tell you the truth. And there's so, like you said, I think it's if you're like if you're under like 30 years old or 32 years old, you've never been through a down market. Like, this bull run we've had since 2010 has been something we've never seen before in the history of the country. Especially since 2020. So you're right. People just don't know what can happen and what that looks like.
Yeah. And it's scary when it does happen. So, the timing was good. You get more involved in real estate, which is a great asset. I'm in the same belief of, I'm just sitting on cash. And I tell my wife all the time, like, it's fun to talk about cash flowing properties. It's fun to talk about an Airbnb up in Gatlinburg or, on the beach in Florida. But the pricing right now for these houses are priced at what you can get out of rent. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's why, in my mind, that's why a lot of these areas have gone up so much in value, because that's what the rental value is when you turn it into an Airbnb. And then it's not a cash flowing asset. And the scary part, which I really have no idea what's going to happen with this, is I saw the other day, BlackRock has $65 billion in dry powder sitting on its side to just go invest in real estate. Mm-hmm. To me, that kills the American dream. Yep. Is when you have institutions investing in residential housing. To me, it kills the American dream, because they now have, I don't want to know if you can say monopoly, but a monopoly-esque hold on pricing and rent.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's kind of a conflict for me, because I'm a big capitalist and believe in the free market and things like that. But some of these big BlackRocks and hedge funds and getting into real estate, it's, while I think they should have the ability to do that, it is almost destroying the single family home market in this
Destroys
country.
it, dude. I live in Franklin, Tennessee. We bought a house. We bought a house for $1 million. Dude, the whole neighborhood's worth $2 million now. Every house on the street. It doubled in 3 years. If it was $2 million, we wouldn't have bought that house. Like, it just prices people out of the market, dude. And every time, and you listen to the Dave Ramsey fans, and they keep saving. Well, by the time you have enough for your down payment, the house has doubled in price. Yep. So how do you fix it? So do you fix it with index funds? Do you fix it with, like I always talk about, fix your income before you go start investing? But so let's go back to you. So you got your involved in real estate. You started traveling the country with Kiyosaki, who's also a life insurance fan. Then what?
Yeah. So, it's been an interesting journey. So with Kiyosaki, things started to slow down at the time. And you also over time learn what you love to do and what you don't necessarily enjoy doing in life.
Yeah. It's the hard part about college. Not many 18-year-olds know what they want to do when they're 45.
Exactly. And that's why when I left college, I literally had no idea what I wanted to do. And so, if you're lucky, you have an opportunity to explore different things in life, right? So what do you enjoy doing? And so I've had that opportunity, but with those opportunities and with that path, it's not always success. It's not always a nice little trajectory of just continuing to grow. There's definitely ups and downs involved. And so, as I was doing a lot of the seminars and the educational side and the consulting with Kiyosaki, I didn't have the time as much to do real estate. So we were continuing to buy some property, but not to the point where it was sustainable to live on. And so at some point, the Kiyosaki thing started to wind down. And especially, I just met somebody that I thought I was going to go on and get married, and we were talking about kids and things like that. And so I said, all right, well, I don't want to travel as much in life. I don't love doing real estate flips. I just, to me, it's just not my thing. Like, I don't like dealing with contractors. I don't enjoy like the design aspect. I can't go into a house and envision it like some of these people. So I just realized it wasn't like my thing,
Yeah.
I enjoy the passive side, but even owning rental properties has its own other set of challenges and problems. And so, I didn't necessarily want to continue being a full-time real estate investor. And so, over the years, I've gone back and I've done other things. I've gone back to being an employee. So at one point I went back and I worked for Marriott for a couple of years. At one point I went back and I worked for actually an air conditioning company. I managed an air conditioning company for a couple of years as an employee. So through my journey of being an entrepreneur, things have been great. But, especially when you're young, you make a lot of money. What do?
Spend it.
Spend a lot of money, it's, especially when you're younger and you don't come from money. And now all of a sudden you have money, it goes out as fast as you make it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I should have probably saved some, or I probably should have invested a little wiser. So I've gone through that, 100%, very honest.
Deerdeck was talking about that. Rob Deerdeck was saying, man, I didn't save a penny until I was 40 years old. I made a lot of money and I spent even more.
Yeah, exactly. So I did the same exact thing. But anytime I've ever had to go back and become an employee or have that kind of job again, I've always had it with the mindset, this is only a stepping block until I can get back to building another business or so, so ultimately, in 2017, I got back into building an educational company that spun off into new partnerships that eventually led me to meeting Chris Noggle and Brent Kessler, which is the Money Multiplier, in 2019. And over the last 4 or 5 years now, we've been able to build an empire. And a lot of it's been done through our past experiences. So my experience as an entrepreneur, not only as the advisor side and understanding investing, but through real estate investing, understanding, what people want, when they do start to look at controlling their wealth and getting out of that 9-to-5 job and becoming an entrepreneur, and, everything we teach with controlling wealth and being your own bank and all of that. So what does that look like? How do we get that education information in front of people? Because I'm a big believer that you should never invest in something that you don't know, like, and understand. So you have to, have that education. You have to enjoy what you're doing for it to make sense. And so we've been able to really build this up since 2019, and it's been a lot of fun doing so because I love this side. I love the education. I love working with clients. I love consulting. I love building trainings and sharing information, things of that nature.
You know what I love about it too? The life insurance, it never can go down. Like, so as a coach, educationer, in the role of helping people making financial decisions, I never have to apologize. Market can't go down, or your life insurance can't go down. By the way, you can use it for whatever you want. So when you're ready to take risk and invest in something that like and love, you got the capital or dry powder sitting right there, just like BlackRock and the $65 billion. So you have a hat on BYOB. It does not stand for bring your own beer. It stands for, what is it?
Unless it's a Friday night and you're coming over to my house then. But so be your own banker, BYOB.
And so that's what the Money Multiplier is. You guys teach people basically infinite banking using life insurance. And explain infinite banking in a couple of sentences.
Controlling your wealth. I mean, it's something, and I never understood the power of whole life insurance when used the proper way. We weren't taught this as advisors.
You weren't taught that at Ameriprise, were you?
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
Why? Because Ameriprise wants you to take risk in the market, and then they'll charge you a fee based on whatever you decide to do. But they're not tied to the bottom line.
Take risk in the markets, but also remember when we build these whole life policies, overfund them the way that we typically do, the commissions are cut by 60 to 90% in most cases. Ameriprise Financial want their advisors out there selling products they're making 90% less on. They want to make that money. They're a publicly traded huge company. So they're going to try and train their people to make the most money possible. So risk in the markets, the highest possible, policies where they get paid the most commissions and all of that stuff. And that's not what we do at all now.
In my book, I have a chapter on this, why your advisor loves your 401k. Because people think, and this is what's crazy, because the DOJ is trying to create no more commissions in the financial world, which will eliminate the middle class getting advice. And because they say commissions are bad, you can't give objective advice if you get paid a commission, which is complete horse shit, in my opinion. I guess we can swear in this podcast. And if you add up the fees on pre-taxed money, even after-tax money, but pre-tax where the IRS hasn't gotten their fair share, the advisor gets to charge a fee on money that has to go to the IRS. These fees are incredibly high when you interpolate the lifetime of the account. And you compare that to an upfront cost of getting a policy started, it blows it out of the water. It's incredibly more expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. And, even outside of that, we get into full financial education. Be your own banker is not only, life insurance, but also where is the rest of your money? There's always like good, better, and best. So like somebody that's not educated, maybe they have like a 401k, they have some cash, they're investing in a brokerage account, something like that. Fine. But how can we be smarter with that? So with the cash, why not run that through a policy where now we have that uninterrupted, guaranteed, as you said, you can't lose money. And in the investment world, you can't use the word guaranteed. And that's what I love about what we do with this whole life is I can now use the word guaranteed for the first time in my life.
It's amazing.
It's
talk about
tax-free growth for the rest of your life.
Yeah. And talk about sleeping well at night. Can you imagine being an advisor during 2008 or 2001? Watching people's accounts go back 30%. And by the way, I'm still going to get paid, but I feel your pain. Sorry it went down.
And that's when I was getting out was in 08 of the advisor. But guess what? All of my associates, all of my friends were in it. And I was watching them hiding under their desks and avoiding phone calls. And, so it's 100%, man. And that's what's cool is that guaranteed aspect. But here's what's even better about it is not only can you take that cash and put it in that guaranteed vehicle, but like you mentioned before, when an opportunity does arise, what happens? That cash is available within that policy that now you can loan out and you can use that money to get into that opportunity. So now we have not only uninterrupted compounding growth guaranteed over here, but over here, we're growing our wealth outside of that thing simultaneously. I've never seen anything before in my life. Well, I know this is a fact. There's nothing else that exists in the United States of America that allows us to take cash and do that with it.
Yeah.
So why not? So good, better, and best, right? So good, cash, better, let's put it into a policy. Best, let's put in a policy and then get that money moving. So our money in motion is always making more money. Money sitting still is typically going to be losing to inflation. So let's get that money moving when it makes sense to do so. And then we look at qualified funds. So, okay, a 401k, fine. Maybe they're giving you a match. Maybe there's a reason for that or not. I don't know. In most cases, probably not with the fees and everything once you add it up. But what if we, instead of a 401k, what if we open up like a Roth IRA? Because at the end of the day, that 401k, you're still going to pay taxes on that money. What are taxes doing? Have you looked at the national debt lately? It's growing by unbelievable amounts of money right now. Interest on that debt is just becoming $1 trillion like a month, or $1 billion a month, or whatever it is. And so it's wild, these numbers when you look at them. But how are we going to pay that debt off?
The government will spend less. When I go to retire, the government will spend less. Taxes will come down.
Right. Yeah, let's bank on that, right? So at the end of the day, we got to pay for it. So taxes, how are we not going to increase taxes? So you're putting off paying taxes till later when they're probably going to be higher. So why not a Roth where we get rid of that tax today and now all that growth within there is tax-free? So that might make sense, but why have that market risk? So that's why if we're controlling our money, why not control our money through like a self-directed retirement account? So now we take those qualified funds, we're taking advantage of the IRS rules for either tax-deferred or tax-free growth, but now we control that money. So now I can invest in things like real estate. I've owned real estate in my IRA. Today, I do a lot of private money lending for both my policies and my IRA. I can go and I can invest in businesses. I mean, Peter Thiel turned an IRA. He was one of the co-founders of PayPal. He turned an IRA that had like $50,000 into an IRA tax-free worth billions of dollars through a Roth.
That's a Roth,
IRA.
right? That's in a Roth.
A Roth, yeah, absolutely. And he invested in businesses with it that just exploded. So there's all these things that we can do to control our wealth that just most people just never learn about.
So when I think of be your own bank or infinite banking, it doesn't have to be life insurance. The idea of infinite banking, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the infinite banker here. Infinite banking to me is leveraging other people's money with an underlying asset that can theoretically continue to grow.
Correct.
So in a policy is just the easiest way to do that, because you have the guaranteed growth in a policy. Then I leverage it and go buy an outside asset. Now I have growth in the policy and outside assets. And the idea is infinite banking, because if I borrow money from the policy, I'm using the insurance company's money. Big misconception. You're borrowing your own money. No, you're not. You're borrowing the insurance company's money. Your money continues to grow. I'm using the insurance company's money to go invest in something. And any rate of return, if I have no money invested, is an infinite rate of return.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Would you add to that?
Yeah, I mean, on top of that, I mean, infinite banking to me is kind of, there's an infinite way to use this new banking system. So what ultimately we're looking at doing is stopping all of the wealth killers, things like money, like all the interest that most people pay to the banking system, the Wells Fargo, the Chase, when you buy a car, the BMW, the Toyota Financial, all of those. So, if I go get a car loan, I'm paying 7%, 8% interest. All that interest gets bled out of my financial life to banks. Where if I can create a banking system, now I want to go buy a car, I go to my own bank to borrow that money. And now when I buy that car, instead of paying somebody else's bank, now I'm paying my own bank back. And I'm keeping all of that interest that would have went to make Wells Fargo wealthier. Now it's making my family wealthier. So that's a great example of purchases. Or, another way to look at it is paying off debts. So a lot of people have racked up credit card debt or student loan debt or other debts out there. So, how can we run our money through one of these policies, then use that money to pay off that debt and then snowball that debt? And where instead of giving Chase and American Express all that interest, now we're taking that same interest we were giving to them and we're giving it back to ourselves. So we're able to create this debt payoff system with infinite banking. Is good.
2 points. Debt is very interesting. And then I want to talk about the interest that you pay back, because this is a misconception and you guys talk about it so fast.
Sure.
People have this idea that they're paying themselves, and it's not black and white. So first, though, debt. I met with a lady, $30,000 in credit card debt. Horrible debt to have. Revolving, high interest rate. It kills your credit score. And she had $80,000 in cash. It's like, wait a minute. You're paying massive interest here to have the safety net of the cash. If you just took the cash and paid off the debt, you could still go use your credit card if you ran into an emergency. That's the emergency fund. And so if we use the cash to go pay off the credit card, then the cash is gone forever. And what that money could have earned is also gone. And the reason people don't do this math, because banks aren't paying much on savings accounts. There's no rate of return. So that opportunity cost is like next to nothing. Right. So what she wants to do after she's seen our videos, she wants to take a portion of the savings. We're going to dump it into a policy with a first year dump in extremely high cash value, and then take the cash value out and pay off the debt. Okay. Here's why. The insurance company continues to pay dividends and growth on that money that she put in and then took out. They don't recognize that the money that's out of the policy. They continue to pay the growth on as if all the money was still in the policy. Plus she gets a death benefit. Now, as she pays back the savings, which she would have replenished the savings account at the bank, she's going to replenish the savings inside the policy. She'll have more money than what she would have had she just paid cash. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the idea of infinite banking, to pay off debt. But you guys say something so fast, and I want to push back on this. You talk about paying yourself interest. You got to clarify this, because in an insurance policy, I am not. I pay the interest to the insurance company. What you guys say is pay yourself interest. You got to explain that. Unpackage that for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you borrow the money from the policy to use it for whatever you're using it for, infinite amount of ways to use it, and we'll continue that in a second. When you borrow the money from the policy, the insurance company charges an annual simple interest that you pay on any outstanding loan amount throughout the year. So if you borrow $10,000 from the policy and you keep that 10,000 out the whole year, let's say the interest rate is, let's say they charge 6%. I'll just throw a number out right now. So you're going to pay, $600 in interest to the insurance company for having that $10,000 out for that year. Now it's simple interest though. So if you take the 10,000 out and then throughout the year, you're putting the money back into the policy, let's say you get it back in 6 months, you're going to pay half that. So it's going to be $300 in interest, because it's simple interest. They calculate it daily. Now that goes to the insurance company. Now that is basically wiped out though, like you're paying it, but you're also, remember, like Matt said, when you take the money from the policy, you're not actually taking your money from the policy. You're borrowing from the insurance company's general account and using your policy as collateral. And that allows all of your money to stay in there, compounding through the company's annual dividends and guaranteed growth. And so you're paying that interest to the insurance company, but your money's also in there compounding and growing for you. So in the first few years, it's kind of like it just kind of wipes each other out, where the growth is about the same as what you're paying the insurance company, the interest annually. But at the end of the day, over some time, because that money's compounding in there, you're actually going to end up that 6% or 5-6% you're paying the insurance company in interest becomes basically, you don't even notice it because of the strong compounding growth you have within your policy. But that aside, when we talk about paying yourself back interest, if I have debt right now where I'm paying Chase Bank, let's say 22% on a credit card, it's probably pretty close to what most credit cards are, 22, 24%. Let's say I'm paying Chase Bank 22% on a credit card right now. Well, if I take the money from my policy and I use that cash to pay that debt off, what I'm going to do though is, instead of that monthly amount going to Chase Bank, paying them 22% on these minimum payments, I'm going to take that exact amount of money, but instead of giving it to Chase Bank, I'm going to pay it back to myself. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a plan for you that just shows you exactly how to do that. So instead of giving that money to Chase Bank each month, you're giving it back to your bank each month. And that's where that 22% that you were paying to them, you were paying it anyways. So now you're just going to pay it back to yourself. And that's going to allow us to now get more money and snowball it a lot faster, because now instead of that 22% lost that's in our lives, now that we can use to go out and pay off more debt or just start investing and growing wealth.
I'm glad you clarified. Yeah, 100%. I'm glad you clarified, because a lot of the old school advisors get butthurt about the idea when infinite bankers say you pay yourself interest, because the consumer hears, I'm going to pay interest back to myself. Well, you do. And there's an interest rate that's due to the insurance company. And the part that's great, once you understand this, and after long term, it really makes sense this is for anybody with a long view of the playing field, right? It's, if somebody wants to get rich tomorrow, hang up the phone. This is not what we do. This is a sure way to not go broke, but it's not going to teach you how to get rich right away. But when I leverage the money, so let's say you have, 300,000 in cash. If I take out 50 grand for an investment or 100 grand, the 300 grand is growing. And I'm only going to pay that interest, that simple interest, to the insurance company on the money that I borrowed. And if I can use it to pay off debt, the interest rate that I was paying to the credit card, there's a ton of interest. The money that's going to interest to the credit card is gone forever. Now the money that was gone forever can go back into my policy and help that compounding long term. So in 10 years, you have so much more cash than you would have had. So I'm glad we clarified that, because I think that it's a really big misconception. People say you pay yourself interest,
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And another great example of it is, whenever we look at investing, it's all about the spread. So a lot of people are familiar with a HELOC, for example, a home equity line of credit. And if you're not familiar, then, let's learn about that, because, everybody that's owned a house longer than 3 or 4 years has equity in their home right now. Like you mentioned, Matt, your home's probably doubled in price.
It's
so
crazy.
You probably have $1 million in equity sitting there in your home. But if that, just because the value of your home rose, doesn't necessarily mean anything for you, Matt, unless you take action on it, because that $1 million in equity that's in there, it's a good feeling. Hey, I owe less than $1 million on my house. It's worth $2 million. Great. But what is that equity doing? It's just sitting in your rafters.
Dead.
It's sitting in your walls. So what if we could tap into that equity? And that's what a HELOC essentially is. So now we can tap into that HELOC. Right now rates are a little higher, let's say 8%. But I go out there and, something Chris and I launched three or 4 years ago, a company called Private Money Club, which I'll bring it back in a second. But Private Money Club is a community of private money lenders and real estate investors. So, what I can do is I can go on Private Money Club and I can find a real estate investor that has an opportunity that, let's say, will pay me 15% annual interest for lending me their money on a real estate deal. Now, why would I do that? Well, I'm doing exactly what the banks do. So again, being your own bank, all we're doing is mimicking what the banks do. So Matt, if you wanted to go flip a house right now, right? And let's just say you don't have any money to do so. And you need, let's say, $300,000 to go purchase that house and do the rehab on it. But after you're done, you're going to make 150 grand on it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And would you be willing to pay me, let's say 15% interest for 6 months for you to go buy that house, do the rehab and get that house sold? You're going to make 150 grand. Are you willing to pay me 15% on that 300 grand to do that?
Yes.
If you had no money, why not? Right? Why wouldn't you?
100%.
And so I have the money, you need the money. I'm going to lend you the money. Now to secure that deal, I'm going to do it just like a bank does. I'm going to have a mortgage, I'm going to have a promissory note, and I'm going to have all the language in these contracts that protect me as the lender. So if you don't pay me back, then guess what? I get to get that home that's worth a lot more than the $300,000 that I lent you for it. Presumably that house is worth 500-600 grand. Okay, so that's called loan to value. We won't get into all that right now, but this is what private money lending is. We're mimicking what the banks do. Exactly. So let's just say I don't have 300 grand cash, but I got 300 grand in equity in my home. Well, I can go out there and I can borrow that money from my house through the HELOC at 8%. I can lend it to you at 15%. Now what am I doing? I'm making a 7% spread. So if you take $300,000 at 7%, what is that, like 21 grand a year? I mean, that's almost a couple $1,000s a month coming in, about $1,800 a month coming in that otherwise would have just been stuck in my walls and rafters. I mean, could an extra $1,800 a month help you?
Yeah.
I don't know
100%.
your situation, but it could pay for a new Range Rover. Maybe your wife wants a new Range. I mean, it's going to pay that. So now that money that was in my wall is now providing the payment for a brand new Range Rover for my wife. Happy wife, happy life. You agree with that? So we're just being smart with our money. Like, where is it? How can we tap in? How can we leverage? How can we make those spreads? And how can we be as smart as possible? So if you want to take it to the next level, what if we took that money and before we did everything I just told you, what if we first ran that money through the policy? Took it from the policy and did everything I just told you. Now that money's in the policy for the rest of my life. I'm 41 years old. The rest of my life, it's in there compounding, growing, providing death benefit for my family later when I pass. It's all in there and I'm still out there doing everything I just talked about. So good, better, and best, right? And that's all at the end of the day, what we do with, call it infinite banking, call it being your own bank, call it overfunded life insurance, call it just being smart with your money. This is what the wealthy do. And this is what we're teaching everyday people to do every single day.
And so this is what Kiyosaki talks about a lot of savers are losers. They're losing. They're saving paper money and they're not using it. And what you're talking about is having money in motion. And it's like the physics law. Objects in motion tend to stay in motion. And so if you can get your money working for you or your equity working for you, I call it debt equity, inside of a home.
And that's the beautiful thing about the life insurance, again, is just the fact that we can put the money in there. And even if we don't need it right now, we want to be conservative. We want to wait to see what the market does. We want to just have it somewhere protected. I mean, why would you want your money sitting in someone else's bank where they're paying you, like you said, 1% if you're lucky in a savings account? I mean, even in a money market, sure, it's at 5% right now, but Powell's already said they're going to start lowering rates this year. So what's going to happen? Those rates aren't going to be around much longer. So now you're back to earning 1 or 2%. Where's inflation? Inflation is at 3, 4. Some people are saying it's going to go back up. So we're losing money at the end of the day. But if I can get into that life insurance policy, it's guaranteed growth now. So at least while it's sitting, not doing anything, it's still kind of in motion, making something for us for the future. And then we can take it and put it in real motion when we need to.
One thing that if I were to critique infinite banking is the lack of conversation on the death benefit. Because at the end of the day, that's what helps me sleep at night too. If something happens to me, my family is going to get millions tax-free. And now I have the permission slip to go take higher risk. And because, I have equity in the home, I have equity in these policies. Right now it's more advantageous to use the equity in the policies for investing because the interest rate is lower. My HELOC is at 9.9%. But
Yeah.
the value of having the HELOC open is really the key, because when you need money, it's hard to get to. So opening a HELOC when you don't need the money is a great idea, and it's just dry powder sitting on the side. So when the right opportunity comes, you can jump on it. And now I have options, right? I have my life insurance loan at 5 or my HELOC at 10. Well, the life insurance is going to be a lot more attractive to disperse that equity into some other investing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the death benefit is
So
definitely not talked about enough in infinite banking. And for me personally, being younger, I never really cared about the death benefit. And then I got married and I was like, I still didn't really care about the death benefit. Then I had a kid and I'm like, okay, maybe this is something I want to start thinking about a little bit more. And now it's like,
yeah,
how much death benefit can I get? Because, someday this is all going to go and I'm going to build a legacy. And that's really, really cool. And, as an advisor, it's one of those things you don't think about until it actually happens to one of your clients. And, unfortunately, I did have a client pass away just a few months ago, and their family reached out to get that death benefit, and they couldn't thank us enough for starting that policy for that person, because now they're going to get all that tax-free money that they can have in their life that wouldn't have been there otherwise. So not only is it something you think about and you start to think more about as you get older, but it becomes very real when you see it personally affect someone's life like that, and then it just puts it forefront of your mind. So
yeah, I will never apologize for being a life insurance advisor. When you see life happen like that, I don't want my clients to have a GoFundMe for kids that are left behind.
right.
Could I get a better rate of return elsewhere? Sure, and I hope you do. But I can show you how it goes through the policy first, so you have the safety net.
Mm-hmm.
I met with a woman last year who her husband passed away, and they had two 17-year-old daughters, and they had nothing. They had nothing, bro, nothing. They had some equity in the home, but they had no savings. And the business partner, and the guy's business partner, I don't know if this was out of charity or a deal that they were doing. He gave her $1 million check, gifted it to her, $1 million. And so we were talking about how do you structure this, and it's like there is so much to talk about there, because you saw firsthand what happens if you just don't plan for the what if. The beginning of my talks with clients is always, I don't care how much money you have, I care how much you can lose. Because life happens, and you joke the trajectory of life is never a linear path. And there's that old picture, the cartoon guy walking down a cliff, and then in a lake, and then climbing up the cliff, and you think you're doing this, but you have all these obstacles. You can plan for that stuff, man. Plan for that stuff. This is why me putting money into a retirement account should certainly not be the first thing to do at 25 years old. I want liquidity. I want access to cash. I certainly don't want a government-controlled asset that I can't touch. So I love what you guys do with all the education. You guys have so many products, man. Talk about how if somebody wanted to learn a little bit more, what could they do with you guys, you and Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we give all of our best stuff away for free. Also, we're big proponents of education and
Good. Me
and
too.
just helping people. And we believe if we give enough, that we'll get. And so we build literally the entire business off of that aspect. So we do multiple live streams and webinars every single week. You can go to so my business partner Chris Noggle is more the forward facing of everything. So you can go to chrisnoggle.com, on YouTube at the Chris Noggle. We put out content almost every single day. We live stream on there twice a day, every Wednesday, twice 2 times every Wednesday we live stream. We have wealth webinars you can register for on chrisnoggle.com. And if you're looking to really control your wealth and learn more about how to get out of the markets, be smart with things like private lending or maybe getting into real estate investing, we did launch the Private Money Club. So it's privatemoneyclub.com, and tons of education. We do a webinar twice a week on private money and real estate investing. Again, all free of charge. So I'd love for everyone to come. And Matt, maybe I can give you some links to put out how to join all this free education. And we'd love to share it, and appreciate your relationship, Matt. It's always great to see you at the events, and what you guys are doing, just showing people the same thing, and taking it even a little deeper. I know you get in a little bit more, not advising, but personal relationships with your clients. And I absolutely love that. So you guys are
Thanks, man.
rocking.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We'll make sure to get the links in the description. So if people want to learn, I think what's really interesting for a lot of people would be that private money club. There's not many groups out there that are like that, especially with the training and everything that you guys have put together. So that's cool.
Yeah,
And we'll make sure the links are. Oh, go ahead.
On that match is real fast. It came out of a need. There's nothing else on the market right now that Private Money Club does that connects real estate investors with people that have money in a way that Private Money Club does. And it came out of a need for us because as we started to get more involved with infinite banking and all the consulting education that Chris and I do now, it took away from our real estate businesses. Chris had a show on HGTV called Risky Builders, had flipped 260 houses, very involved on hundreds of doors of rental property. But as we started to sell that stuff off and get more passive, to concentrate on other things, the businesses, but you still got to keep your money moving. So because we knew, like, and understand real estate, okay, let's lend the money out instead of owning the real estate and doing the active side of the business. But who do you lend to? Where do you find these deals? Where do you find these opportunities? And so, out of a need, we said, well, what if we can create this community where people can find it? And as we started to do more and more infinite banking and creating policies and showing people how to control their wealth, well, once you pay off all your debt, once you don't have anything to buy, well, let's get that money in motion. And so many people, just from the nature of infinite banking, where, infinite banking, or whatever you want to call it, there is a big mindset shift. Do you agree, Matt, with that?
100%.
You got to kind of take everything you've been taught and change everything, right?
It's not for everybody, right? I mean, a lot of people don't want to be actively participant with their money. They want to give it to, the financial advisor with the $3,000 suit and the cufflinks and say, good luck. You can gamble with my money. I'll see you when I'm 60. A lot of people don't want to take control.
I could not agree more with that. It's not for everybody, but those that do go down that rabbit hole and start going down that financial education journey, they start opening their eyes to the stock market has been a hockey stick, and it's been the largest bull run, and it's at all-time highs. And technically speaking, fundamentally speaking, there's no logic or reason for that happening right now.
No.
So a lot of people, once they start opening their eyes out, they're like, well, I need to get out of that, but I do understand I got to keep my money moving. So they start learning about real estate invest. Every wealthy person I've ever met, and you can study this through all of history too. What do? What do they all have in common? They own real estate. They're involved in real estate. They own businesses. So people start going down this route, but we have a lot of successful people that go down this route that have full-time jobs. They love what they do. They're happy with what they do. They just need, so they can't actively go flip real estate. They can't actively own rentals, but they can be in real estate by lending money on single deals, on development deals, on multifamily projects, on all the different types of real estate. The other great thing about real estate, it doesn't matter what the market's doing. You can make money in a down market, an up market, a level market, as long as you're educated and know what you're doing. So they go down this journey of all this financial education. So that's where Private Money Club came from, was out of a need because there's nothing else out there for people to go do this.
Is it mainly for real estate investing, or can someone, if someone wanted to get involved with buying and selling businesses, do you guys lend for that as well?
It's a great question. So right now it's focused on real estate just because that's kind of the nature of what most of these deals are. But in the next year or so, we will have it open to other opportunities. In fact, you can go on right now. We have a public forum where you can go post if you have a business, which we've had a couple people successfully do actually, that have raised money for businesses. One guy was buying a cabinet shop that was in relation with his investment company. So somebody lent on that. We had a guy build I can tell you a bunch of stories, but so absolutely. So you can post on there. There's a free membership. You can go on, check it out, privatemoneyclub.com. It's a beautiful community.
I love it, dude. Well, I'm going to make sure to get the links in the description because I think a lot of people would be interested. But Stephen, great chatting with you today, man.
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. Thanks for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
All right, buddy. I look forward to seeing you again. Everybody listening, check out the description if you want to learn more on infinite banking as well as the Private Money Club, which is, I think, changing people's lives. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.